SG Reads.
Hello fellow travelers, my name is SG and welcome to the channel. Today, I want to talk about James Gunn's DC Universe coming up. He has recently shown the Creature Commandos, which is coming out in December, and all in all, looks pretty good. I do like the way it's shaping out overall, but I want to talk about what's coming along in the matter of shows and movies that we will be seeing as the next steps in the new DCEU. So, for the most part, I just want to talk about the movies that are confirmed to come out, along with what they may be about, because we haven't really gotten anything hard as facts coming, but we can pretty much guess what's going to happen, judging by the titles and the characters, and I might be wrong on certain things, but that's what this is about. I want this to be more of a discussion rather than being a prediction. So, for right now, let's get started, shall we? But before that, if you like my content, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate it. If you have something that you want to add, or if you disagree with me, please leave it down in the comment section. I really like to hear opinions on all these different projects coming out pretty soon. With that being said, let's get started, shall we? Now, for the most part, this has already been called the Gods and Monsters section of the DCU, the first section of this fall. So there will be more world building allowed in this section, I guess you could say. More of trying to be year one, while at the same time trying to take a little bit from everything. So we'll just jump in with kind of that thought process along the way. Now, with our first one pretty much being covered in the Creature Commandos, we're just going to talk about it along with the next. Alright, let's get started. Now, this feels like an interesting take because the Creature Commandos are an older comic series to even cover, consisting of major Hollywood movie monsters in a kind of combat style world, consisting usually in World War II or in those kind of scenarios. In this one, it seems that they were taking more of the classic monsters through a Suicide Squad thing, which may lead to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with Frankenstein. And if you pay attention, it kind of feels like a bit of a Hellboy kind of style, with both the art style being a little similar and the characters kind of resembling different Hellboy characters along the way. But I will give this one the benefit of the doubt, along with G.I. Robot being an interesting take in the overall story. I can't wait to see what we get with the overall Creature Commandos. I do enjoy it. It's going to be fun. And if you've even seen just the Brave and the Bold episode, where they just show the Creature Commandos a little bit, you do know that they're a very diverse and interesting set of characters in the storyline altogether. Waller seems to be our next series that we're really going to be into the whole main DC universe, which does feel like the correct option, because now we'll be seeing either a mix of her origin story and where she currently is, showing a lot more of Waller's background to a character we don't really know much of in the movies. Now, if we go to the comic books, we do know a little bit more, but not really that much more, just as she's the main bad of most of the DC universe. So I do think this is a good aspect to go with, to kind of suggest who she is, what she's about, and showing more of her personal life. And I do like the idea, if we went with the New 52 version, where she was a family woman, where she has a husband, kids, and they don't really know about her background overall, but that she's seen the roughest in the military. She knows the secrets of this world and doesn't really trust supers or anything of higher power than any normal human, and is doing this in her own twisted way of protecting her own family and those around her, even losing a loved one, whether it be a fiance or ex-husband, in the middle of battle during another operation, which we know was the Creeper in the original run of the comics. So for right now, that would have to be the overall story we'd go with, kind of learning the backgrounds of certain characters in the DCU and hinting that Waller has contingency plans for them. Pretty much what we see in Justice League Doom, but to a lesser degree, more of just gathering information at the beginning of this whole series. Now, the main one that is going to be talked about most is Superman Legacy, which is number 3 on the list, consisting of, as you guessed, Superman, but more of in the middle of his, I guess, career as Superman. We will see flashbacks here and there about him before all this, and we're definitely going back to a more traditional 1950s style Superman, which isn't wrong. I do think that's the correct way of going about this, making it bright, colorful, making him cheerful than what we've seen. And at the same time, we're going to get this all-star Superman, where the death of Superman is more than less looming around him, where he is questioning his own mortality, or more or less questioning his place in this world as Superman. And I do like the idea that we focus more on the human aspect of Superman. Why does he do this without making him a godlike character? More of just making him a home character, making him somebody who wants to understand his abilities and at the same time understand humanity as a whole. And with the addition of Hawkgirl, Green Lantern, and various other characters like Mr. Terrific, I do think that we will have a much more ensemble kind of storyline with this. A lot like the All-Star Superman storyline was, but more of a character dive into Superman himself. Because we've seen a bunch of storylines about Superman, but not really about Superman. We tried with the Man of Steel, but it didn't really land where fans and or most people would have expected it to. Lanterns, I do believe we're going to get more of a Green Lantern Corps cop storyline. A mix of realism with the Emerald Knights movie. For anybody who remembers that, that's where we talked about the different characters in the Green Lantern Corps that are our main protagonists. And in this one, I think we will get John Stewart, Kyle Rayner. We will get Guy Gardner already in the Superman Legacy movie, so we might get Guy Gardner. But we will get more of variety along the characters, understanding them, and even maybe Abin Sur's storyline in the background. I do think this is going to be a main series, and this is definitely one of those where quality will go over quantity, where there may be only 6 episodes, but they will have the budget to kind of back it up, with the animation and storyline going with it. I will like to see that kind of take on it using the Emerald Knight storyline to tell the different stories of these different worlds, and maybe even telling the backgrounds to different enemies, such as Atrocitus' main backing, or maybe even the Star Sapphire Corps, or even just telling some of the other characters in these Corps members that would be interesting, that we have seen sprinkled throughout the main canon, but not really talked about. So I do think that there is a lot that we can do with a Lanterns kind of series, and the idea that it's called Lanterns itself suggests that we will be focusing not on just the Green Lanterns, but rather a bigger array of characters along the way, maybe hinting at something bigger happening later on. Now, the Authority is going to be an interesting character set, because while they are semi-popular, people know them, and I do know that they have their fan bases and their following, but there hasn't been a bigger demand for it. There hasn't been an actual film or TV show adaptation for the Authority. The most we got is probably Superman vs. the Elite, which I do believe is what the Authority later on took in the New 52 as kind of a main thing, with Manchester Black becoming the more prominent figure. And we do see in Rebirth that Superman does become more of their leader along the way. So in this, we will see them becoming more of kind of like what the Creature Commandos become, but more of a deadlier version of the Suicide Squad. And more in line with the Justice League mixed with the Avengers. Because if you look at their character list, they do have that vibe, with Manchester Black being a mix of Captain America with Scarlet Witch. I do think we'll get Midnighter as being our replacement Punisher like Batman. But at the same time, I do think we'll get the Grifter. This will be our first introduction to Grifter, I believe that. Mainly because he was a member of the Authority. And it would be interesting to finally see him on the big screen, because that's a character a lot of people have been asking for, even if it's not a major character. I do think we'll get Jenny Sparks as being kind of this mix of Jubilee, but being more of a serious character joining in. And I do think the main port of this will be that they are a mix of the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Suicide Squad, if that makes sense. They will be hired assassins at the same time, like Grifter, along with various other characters like Deathblow or something like along those lines, and at the same time people that don't really have a direction to go, metas that are barely coming out, because you could even say that in this timeline, metas haven't really been a thing until just recently. They've only been rarely known, and they're looking for a place to belong. That's where you can get Waller saying that she has been assembling the Authority for a minute. All these different characters have been her trying to build something against these other metahumans or super beings, and even say that the Justice League hasn't been built yet, and that they might be the reason why the Justice League is built. But for right now, that's where I'm going to leave it, with the idea that this is kind of be the beginning phases of Waller's ultimate goal. The Brave and the Bold is definitely going to be an interesting one because while at the same time it is a Batman title, I feel that this is going to have Batman play more of a backseat role. Because what we do know about it is that they're going to introduce a lot of Robins. From Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, to even Damian Wayne making his first movie appearance. So to me this feels like it's going to be under the Red Hood, but told from the perspective of all these other Robins. They'll be the main leads in this one. Either helping test Damian Wayne, see if he's able to be a Robin, or trying to solve who this Red Hood character is, which of course is Jason Todd. That seems to be the direction we're going, while at the same time having some leeway to do something different, interesting, and giving Robin his first real chance at being on the big screen. The only other time we've had that is with the Titans series, or even the Batman and Robin movie, or Batman Returns. So, not really a great track record for Robin, but I do think that there is some leeway, and it does allow us to introduce new characters into the whole mix as well as maybe give us a quick rundown on who Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and, for the most part, Damian Wayans are, giving them their own movie to tell their backstories and get to know them overall. While this may not be in the main lineup, it is definitely still interesting that it was mentioned, and that being the Batman 2. Now, we don't really know much about it, just that Hush is definitely going to be a main antagonist in this scenario, and I don't believe that it's going to be a part of the main canon. I do think it's going to be an Elseworlds kind of situation, where it's going to be its own entity, living in its own space, living in its own time, which it should be. It's a good series, and it's fun, and I do love the Penguin. I'm going to be coming up with something for that next week, after we see the final episode. But for right now, I do think that the Batman's main antagonist is going to be Hush. It might be Thomas Elliot for all we know, but I do think that it's going to be leading up to both Harvey Dent making an appearance, along with other characters such as Mr. Freeze. Clayface I do think is going to make an appearance as well, and I don't think Joker is going to make an appearance just yet. I think he's going to come in the third one. But for right now, we can say for a fact, because the creators did admit, that it is Hush that will be making an appearance, but we don't know his main purpose. We don't even know if there's a Thomas Elliot in this series, let alone if he's going to be the main Hush, because as we know, there have been different Hushes in the past. Sometimes it's Jason Todd, sometimes it's Thomas Elliot, and sometimes it's Riddler. So for right now, we're left with just the idea that we may be getting Mr. Freeze, Hush, and also Clayface. So for right now, I'm going to leave it with that. We'll dive more into that next time. Now, the next one on the list was one I believe should either be at the beginning of a list or either be at the end of one. So, and that being the Booster Gold series. I like Booster Gold. Booster Gold is actually a really good character and very interesting, fun, and definitely has a lot of promise to him. But when you introduce a character like Booster Gold, who is known for his time, shenanigans, or stuff like that, he has to come either at the big movie or at the end of a series or at the end of an arc. Because you can hint at different stuff coming into the next arc or the next series or the next big movie. Mainly because he's going to arrive trying to be the hero, but always failing. Not because he's bad at it, but because he doesn't know history. Yep, he's a time traveler that doesn't know history. And that's just how it is for him. So I do think that if we were to get him in a major timeline, it would either have to be at the beginning of an arc, such as it would have been before the Creature Commandos, or even during the Creature Commandos, or at the very end, where we'll see Swamp Thing. So for right now, we will pretty much be leaving at that, where he will be handling smaller tasks, and even handling Blue Beetle villains, because that would be more in line with what we see from his character in the comics. A mix of a Batman, futuristic Blue Beetle character. So for right now, we leave it at that. Now, the next one on the list is actually very interesting, considering how we go in the storyline with Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Now, we could go with a lot of different versions, such as the comic books, but I think the one that a lot of fans would actually like to see is the Batman Superman Apocalypse movie. While it wasn't that popular, the storyline for Supergirl was definitely re-adapted several times after that, being the main story that people go with overall. And considering that we will have Superman and maybe even a Batman in the movie series, does seem to point that that's the direction we'll go. Maybe not directly going to Apocalypse after all, but I do think that it will have certain features that will be similar, aligning with somebody she believes is of similar character. Going with another powerful person because she feels she's powerful as well, and kind of the idea that she's learning about her abilities and trying to become a better person along the way as well. So for the most part, I do think that this is going to be an interesting movie overall, and I do hope that we get the Supergirl from the Flash series, Sasha Calle, because she was actually really good and one of the best parts of the movie, I have to say, for the Flash movie as a whole. Other than Michael Keaton's fight scenes, they were pretty good too. But there is a lot of room for the Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, and I do think that it will lead to a Legends of Tomorrow movie. Well, not Legends of Tomorrow, Legion of Superheroes, I should say. I do think that we will get something along those lines in the future, just not in this one. This will be more of a building experience for the character as well. The last confirmed one that we've gotten, that I will assume is the last in this arc or this series, is Swamp Thing. While an odd one, to say the least, to end on, does make sense. It does make sense that we would either go with a Swamp Thing series or just a movie or maybe special. And it does make it to where we enter into the mystical realm for the DC Universe. We haven't really been able to get into that as of late with the DC Universe, but Swamp Thing has always been the one that has been both laden in science and at the same time laden in mysticism, if you will. Because we do know that he has been part of the Justice League Dark, John Constantine and all those other characters like that, and he himself is a mix of science and technology as well. And with his character, I do believe we'll go with more of the Alan Moore version, more than we will with the original, just being a creature of the swamp. Going with more of a Green Protector kind of vibe with him. So it will be very interesting and have a different take overall. But for the most part, we will be introduced into the next arc from there, which I do believe will be more about mysticism. It will be more about Dr. Fate, Satana, or characters like that, and having their own place in this universe, moving on from regular science and aliens, going into sorcerers and wizards along the way. So I do think that that would be a good turning point and a good dip into it. Now, with all that being said, as I said, the next series after this would probably be about mysticism, but I do believe that it should be about the metahumans as well. And one series that I would like to do is The Outsiders, coming out as mainly the stand-in for the Teen Titans. And preferably, if it were up to me, I would have it being led by Plastic Man, a character that we don't really get to see much of and isn't really in either animated series that much. He did have his own cartoon back in the 60s to 50s, well, 60s to 70s I would say, along with being in the Brave and the Bold series along as well. But other than that, we don't really see him in the movies or anything else, other than the fact that he's not really that charismatic when it comes to movie screenings as well. But I do think that The Outsiders would be an interesting take for a superhero team, especially one that is barely on the up and coming, starting out the new DC Universe. And having Blue Beetle, along with Batman making guest appearances in it, does make sense as well. We don't really know Batman's full appearance in this, but we do know that Superman himself is going to be the main figurehead for the first set of movies. And for now, we will have to think that Batman's going to be taking more of a background role, which is fine. I do think that's a good idea, and because Superman is the main head of DC as a whole, it makes sense that he would be the one up in front for the main series. So for right now, I do think it's going in a fine direction. I do think that the next set is going to be a little more down to earth, while at the same time being completely out there. Well, overall, that's my opinion on the next set of movies we're getting from DC. I do think there's a lot of wiggle room for the characters and some things that we will have later on. But for the most part, this would have to be the bare bones of what we know and what I could gather from knowing about the comic source material, while at the same time my own speculation of what could happen. As I said, I'm a big Plastic Man fan, so I would like to see more Plastic Man coming in. I do like the idea of Batman taking more of a backseat into the main series, while at the same time having Superman becoming more of a proactive character around these times. there is a certain questionable sources that I don't really care for certain projects, but I do want to see how they end up overall. There are certain things I don't really enjoy, like I said, the Booster Gold one I'm iffy about, but there are ones I'm very excited about, like the Lanterns, the Authority, and a lot of the Batman and Superman stuff that we will see, like the Robins. I do think that they do need their own movie to have their time in the main scene, because we don't really get Damian or Tim Drake making appearances other than in the animated series or in the animated films. So, what do you guys think of my thoughts on this coming set of movies? If you guys like it, please leave a like, comment, subscribe down below. Or if you didn't like it, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe down below. And leave a comment telling me what you think I got wrong, what you think I got right. I'd really like this to be a discussion, like usual, and see where it takes us in the matter of what we would like to see in the coming years for the movies, and what James Gunn will or won't do. We'll see how it goes. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a great one.